Hello, everyone. So my name is Filipi Pires, and thank you, everyone, for staying here with me during this webinar. And I don't know, I'd like to know, so what kind of country and city you are, just to see. And I would like to share during this day with you something about the PAN privilege acronym of the privilege access management. And I recorded these presentations because the last time we have some problem with some technical problem actually, and because of that I recorded these presentations, and I will play this video about this topic, and I will look into the chat. So if you have some questions, you can write your question in the chat. I can answer this question during this presentations, and at the end of these presentations, I will return here to talk with you if you have some questions. And I hope you like that. And let me play this video, this record. And once again, if you have any question, if you have some comments during these presentations, you can write in the chat, and I will interact with you, and I will answer some doubts in the chat again. And yeah, let's move on. And I hope you like that, right? So let's do this.
So thank you. And today I would like to invite you to think more about this word like PAN, privileged access management. Actually, sometimes we can think this word can be maybe a famous buzzword, but I would like to invite you to think more about that. Is it future, or is a new mindset or a new methodology? So during this conversation, I'd like to stay with me and to think more about that, right? So let me share my screen here with you. And by the way, if you have any questions, so please, you can interrupt me, no worries about that. And because my idea here is to talk more about that, okay? So this is my contact on Twitter, and here we have more contacts about me. We have my GitHub here if you'd like to see more projects that I've been working, my LinkedIn here. And I have here my webpage with some talks that I've been doing, some events. And I have an article there, so some information about me. So let me introduce myself. Now I am a principal security engineer at talkdesk. It's a company from Portugal, responsible to create a contact center as a service, a product. And I'm security research at Senha Segura. As Alex mentioned, Senha Segura it's a global security company responsible to deliver not only privileged access management, but to deliver a safe authentication process, right, in your organizations, in your company, in your business, okay? And I'm advocate of this awesome project. Hack is not a crime. It's awesome project that we are talking about the hacking, this concept, right? Because the hacking, it's a mindset. It's how you can looking for something in the technology and how you can active your creative mind in this way, right? So it's not a theft of identity or exploitation. When this thing happen, it's happened with a cyber threat. It's a threat actors or attackers, not a hacking. Hacking is really not a crime, okay? And I'm a coordinator of the staff team here in São Paulo of the DEFCON groups, and an instructor of the HackerSec. It's a Brazilian company. I have a course of the more analysis in Portuguese language there, and I'm instructor of the Fantastic Magazine and Hackenine and A Forensic Magazine, these 3 magazines in Europe, right? So when I have a course of the malware hunting in Fantastic Magazine, by the way, just informations about me. Okay, so this is our agenda about these conversations. First of all, I'd like to put in all those people on the same page. So just to explain more about what is a threat or how we can identify this kind of topic, I will explain just a few concepts about what is exactly PAN. I would like to bring you some principles about this concept called zero trust and how you can put in the privileged access management inside of that. And I would like to bring some brainstorm just to think about that, right? And I'd like to invite you to think with me and to suggest you some architecture, or maybe you, again, to bring you with me and to think more about that, okay? So first of all, I would like to do this question: what is a thread? It's a simple question. It is, and this, according to this ISO, it's not definition from Filipi or Senha Segura or other people. It's this definition. It's about this ISO. Okay, so it's a potential cause of the incident makers or to the system or organization. It's a simple definition, but in what way, Filipe? It's a software attack, maybe, or maybe it's a theft of intellectual property, or identity theft, or sabotage, or information distortion. All those examples are information security threats. And if you see more deeply about that, so you can see that all those things is related to a software, right? So when you have something, when you have some company and you have some organization, so if you think about that, all those applications that you have inside of this organization, or if you create a new organization, for example, if you build this new organization in a cloud native, for example, all those things related to a software. So I mean, in the end of the day, all those things is related to a software attack. So because of this, we need to protect more deeply about how can access these informations when you have some applications. Okay, so there's a simple definitions about that. So Filipe, what is exactly PAM? It's a simple definition again. Usually this use it to designate special access or abilities above and beyond that of the standard user. So when you have some user in your organization, you need to define what is the best access they need to have to access some applications or some systems or some special thing inside of the infrastructure. Okay, so we need to centralize the access management with the purpose of the protecting and controlling the use of the generic and high privilege credentials. This is the most important here, because nowadays we have many different teams inside our organization, right? So we have a developer team, we have a database teams, we have an application teams. We don't have only more administration IT guys. We have more than one guy. So mainly when you building a new companies in the cloud native, for example, or like startups, you started in a cloud, so you need to deliver some access in the different teams. So we need to looking more deeply in this topic specifically called privileged access from these users. Okay, so providing the security store or access segregations or full traceability of use. I mean, we need to see more deeply around your different teams. Okay, so what is zero trust? What you can combine both of them, the PAM, privileged access management, and zero trust. So the idea behind of zero trust is simple definition from my perspective, and of course, when you talk about the enterprise companies or maybe a small company, no worries about that. So shouldn't trust in anything. It's a simple definition of the zero trust. Either users or machine or assets or communications, even those inside corporate network. Because in the past, when you talk about the cybersecurity, we're looking more about the outsiders, right, to the company. So who is the people try to explore my company? So we protect the perimeter, like using a WAF, a web application firewall or firewall, but the looking it's more outside the company. But now and nowadays, we need to look more deeply, more in not only outside but inside. If you read for the news, for example, we can see more different attacks using this kind of insider within the company, within the organization. So because of this, we need to looking more for this view, okay, more inside of the network, inside of the corporate network. Yesterday I received a call from a lady here in Brazil. By the way, I'm talking from Brazil now, and I received a call for this girl, for this lady, and she asked me, Filipe, I am suspect that I'm receiving some attack in my corporate network, and I asked her what kind of business that you have, and she's responsible to sell some apartment building and houses, and she was suspecting that she was suffering some attacks, right? And she didn't find what is exactly the place that they are attacking inside of the company, right? So because of this, we need to look in more inside of this concept, zero trust. Okay, so I would like to invite you now think about this kind of principles that we talk about the zero trust. Remember, zero trust is a kind of culture that you can implement in your organization. But of course, when you need to implement in this kind of concept, we need to look in how is exactly the context that you can apply the policies from this culture. And I will explain during our conversation. Okay, so the first principles, by the way, this awesome project is from UK. So I have a reference here I can share with you after this conversation. But it's a good project to think more about that, right? So the first principle is know your architecture. It's pretty important you understand that. Why? Because when you know your architecture, including mainly users and devices and services, you can see and you can define what the best way you can apply your policies, your restrictions, or your even your privileged access management or least privileged access management, and these users are devices and services. Okay, another principle is create a single strong user identity. It's one of the most important kind of contexts that you can apply, because remember, in the past we just need to have the access to the administration IT guy, but now we need to have the more different access, right, in different teams. So we need to define the single strong user identity. Like maybe many times some organizations should use in a single user directly and create accounts that are linked to individuals. So we need to define what is exactly the stronger user identity. Another is create a strong device identity. Take a look back. Of course, it depends on your business, because sometimes we have an user identity. We need to manage the devices identity, or we need to manage the services and applications. So we need to understand that, because of one of the main principles is know your architecture, know your business, because many times we need to have this challenge. Even you are, for example, if you are a board member or a C-level member, many times we need to look more about the strategy in the business, right? But it's pretty important to understand how your business works from the perspective of the architecture when you need to look more about the cybersecurity, right? So it's very, very important. And each device owned by your organization should be uniquely identifiable, because it's more easier to track or to investigate if some incident happened. Okay, so it's more important that. So this is the reference of the project, and if you can read after this conversation. Okay, another principle is authenticate everywhere. It's very important. One of the main concept here when you talk about the privileged access management inside of the zero trust culture, you need to authenticate everywhere. In a zero trust architecture, assume the network is hostile. Okay, authenticate all connections. It's very important, because in this way you can track, you can see about authentications. If you need to investigate more about that, you have this in your organizations. Okay, know the health of your device and services. So if you see here, we have a users, we have devices, even you have a services. So it's very important you understand about the health of devices and servers, and how you have this in your environment, mainly to gain the confidence in this authentications in your organization. Because of this, it's very important, and it's very important principle here. So focus your monitoring on devices and services. One more time, if you see here that these two principles, it's focus and how you can track some possible incident. Remember what is a threat, an incident calls. Remember when I explained in the beginning of our conversation. So we need to look in more about the monitoring or the action of the monitoring. How you can monitor all those authentications, because we need to have not only audit logs from the access, but you need to see, remember, authenticate everywhere. We need to see more about the devices, because you have the user inside the devices to connect in some applications and using the service inside of this device. Because of this, it's very important you understand that. So given that devices and services are more exposed to the network attack, right? So, and the traditional architecture, for example, usually the people use the VPN, okay, virtual private network. But for the attacker perspective, the attacker just need to infect that the users. For example, let's suppose that I'm here in Brazil and I have my company in Nigeria. And from the attacker perspective, they need to attack myself. And if you have the access, if the attacker gain the access in my environment and I have the virtual network, okay, the VPN, the virtual private network, the VPN access my organization in Nigeria. With the attack perspective, they just need to infect me, and after that, then they have the access inside of my organizations, okay? Because the VPN allow my access inside of my organization. That's my point here. But when you have the privileged access management perspective or the least privileged access management, take a look at that. When the attacker gain the access from my users, for example, I just have some permissioning access and some specifically applications and some specifically service inside of my network. So not only my network, but in the applications. So to apply that, you need to have the context. And I will explain more about that in our conversation, but that's the difference when you think about the VPN. And of course, you can use a VPN for something, but when you need to grow your security sensor and how you can improve your protecting your organization, you need to look more about this concept called privileged access management, right? So it's not a buzzword. So you need to understand that. Of course, it's my opinion. I don't know if it's correct or not, but my suggestion to you is think more about that. So how you can using the privileged access management and identity access management, within this culture called zero trust. Okay, and of course, you need to monitor everything. Okay, the seventh principle is set policies according to the value of the services or data, because in the end of the day, this is more like a precious. Okay, it's a good word, but when the attacker try to explore some organization, the idea is to collect some data or to explore some service. So we need to set the policies according to the value about that. Okay, so the power of the architecture, when you talk about the zero trust, it's from about these policies you define. Because remember this word context, we need to use in the context. And this context, it's very important to apply and inside of the policies. When you define the policies, you need to have the context. So based on this context, you can apply the policies. Okay, that's very important. So control the access to your services and data because you can track that. Okay, so each request to a services or application should be authorized against the policies. Okay, so that's very important. And don't trust the network, including the local network. So we have many different attacks in the local network, like, for example, ARP spoofing or another kind of DNS spoofing. Depends, of course, how you can implement this kind of technology, but don't trust the network. Remember when you talk about the insiders. So nowadays we have many insiders in some organizations. So in order to remove the trust from the network, you need to build the trust into devices and the services. Remember, not only to the outsider or the attacker from outside the network. And of course, we need to implement in the perimeter protections, okay? But nowadays, we need to look more deeply inside of our network. So because of this, the privileged access management arrived to us and how we can apply this kind of technology in our organizations, okay? And chose services designed for zero trust. Because of course, when you apply this zero trust using a privileged access management in one of this way, using in this context, you have the intelligence behind of this kind of company, right? So because of this, we need to look more about that. Okay, so have you heard about the least privilege? It's a good word. So in information security, computer sciences or other fields, the principle of the least privilege, it's very, very important because you can give more restricts of the access to the users and the devices and servers. So it's very important you understand about this least privilege, okay? So it requires that a particular abstraction layer of the computer environment. Every module, such as a process and users or programming, right? So, or it's the point here. So Filipe has in some applications. It's just a writer or a reader, or they can move some files, or they can change in some services, they can change in some applications. So we need to see more about the least privilege, because how many least privilege you give your users or your services, more is safe your environment. Okay, so this is the simple concept. Let me think now about I would like to bring some brainstorm about that. So today we have an insider threat, right? So who is exactly the insider threat? So nowadays in the deep web, you can see in more, not only deep web, you can see in some forums by the internet, some threat actors to try to talk with the people and to try pay for this insider threat services, right? And in the past, with privileged access, it's just from administration IT guide or team, and the C-level access, we need to give the C-level access sometimes, because they need to access in some applications, and this kind of people, or it's a part of the board member. They need to have the important access. Okay, and about work from home, not only in the pandemic, but now we have many remote workers. Okay, and we have a cloud access. So how we can manage this kind of access? So what would be the risk impact exactly when we talk about the explorations or the exploitation from our organizations? So we need to think more about that. So we have this kind of challenge to delivery in our organization. So how we can protect our environment against insider threats, privileged access, C-level board again, and the work from home, cloud access, and so on and so on, right? So now, how this works in nowadays, so how we can protect that, okay? So we have the developer teams, as I mentioned. So this kind of team needs to access in many different applications or apps. We have a DevOps team responsible to build the architecture, right? We have, for example, now infrastructure as a code. We have the guys developing this infrastructure. So access many systems, providing many environments. So how we can protect this team? And we have a database team responsible to deliver this infrastructure to the developer team or to the DevOps team. So these three different teams works together. So how we can protect this team, right? Remember, we need to deliver this access from these different teams. So take a look at that. It's not just only administration team guys, okay? We need to deliver more different access. So how we can protect that? That's the point here. So if you see the last attacks in the news, so it's not only more the attacker perspective to see the administration guy. They're looking to the developer team, the DevOps team, the database team, the cloud team, because they have the access, the privileged access, right? Because they need this privileged access. So how you can improve the security from these teams? That's the point here. And leaders of the business units. So we have many teams inside of the network, and you need to deliver the access from these teams, and how you can improve the security. Now this is a good point to think about that, and let's think together with me. So we have a privileged access management has a traditional and being categorized under the umbrella of the identity and access management. So in the past, we started to hear about the IAM, the IAM, okay, and identity access management. But you have a privileged access management now. So identity access management is involved in until recently conventional approach that you need to resolve or revolve around the user and digital identifiers, and how you can manage the email address, devices, or the birth or passwords for verifications. Okay, you need to define these in kind of policies, and based on this identity and access management, you can deliver the access. But how you can manage these policies and using a privileged access management, because again, the Filipi Pires, the username, and they have, for example, email address, Filipi Pires at filipipires, for example.com, and how I can define this privileged access from these specific users. And this is how you can use it in the PAM, the Privileged Access Management. So in our increasingly cloud oriented digital environment, as I mentioned, and you need to apply more than just a username and password. We need to provide in the policies and this name called context. So how you can use this in your cloud environment or in your virtualization environment. It depends of your environment, but it's not depending actually. It not depends of your environment. You need to apply the least privilege in whatever, no matter environment that you have in your organizations. Okay, and for this reason, identity access management and privileged access management is a best practice have involved inside of this zero trust concept, because you can prioritize the security value of the credentials, okay, and the accounts, I mean the object, and it's this called an account, and the security access to the privileged data and system infrastructures, applications, and the services. Okay, so how you can manage this. It's very important. This dynamic now holds true and for all users in scenarios and any operations eventually. So remember about the principles. You will see more deeply about all those authentications process in your environment, not just to see about the account of the users, the object, but you will see about the targets like a data, a system, a services, and an infrastructure and application. So many different characteristics. Okay, so let me bring you some architectures brainstorm just to think more about that. Okay, so here's some ideas, and here is the explanation about the context. As I mentioned sometimes during our conversation, you have in one side you have the users and employees and partners and customers, and maybe you have a third parts here too. And based on this users, you need to give the access from this user, from this perspective, okay? And based on these users, you can give the context. You have a protocol like a TCP, like a SMTP, like HTTPS or another different protocols. You have the credentials. Remember, it's responsible for IAM, okay, identity access management. This is a part of the informations when you talk about the culture of the zero trust. Remember that, okay? We have the context with the network. For example, I have networks different based on, for example, in a private network or public network, or some network based on class A, class B, class C, and so on and so on. Okay, devices, if you use in a and using your personal device, for example, when you need to access some applications in your devices, in your mobile, for example, or using the email or another different apps, and based on the locations here. For example, I'm here in Brazil, and you don't have, for example, let's suppose that you don't have any different or any business with Brazil. So why you need to give the access from some guys in Brazil? You can imagine that. So you can restrict this access from based on the locations if you don't have any business with this country. Okay, so this is the kind of context that you can use in a privileged access management. Actually, you will define a privileged access management, but you can use in this context to apply the culture of the zero trust. Okay, so this is the point here. So this is a context important that you need to define to apply that. Okay, and for the other hand, you have the policies. This is the responsible to manage that. Okay, using a privileged access management, and after you validate the context and the policies based on that, you can deliver access to this resource like cloud, like perimeter, or on-premise environment. So as you can see here, you have a different environment. Okay, not only cloud, but you can use this in your on-premise, using the virtualization technology or something like that. Okay, so remember, this is a simple, and for me, it's a good value here. You need to understand the context in your organization. Because of this, the first principle is know your architecture, because based on that, you can define your context. Okay, know your business, and you need to define the policies behavior based on a privileged access management. You will use the credential based on identity access management, and after that you can set the least privileged access here in policy behavior, and after that you can deliver this access from this resource. You see that you have many gateways here to block the access, the tentative of the attacker from the threat actor. You can see the difference when you just looking from the VPN, from virtual private network. When you have the virtual private network, you give the access, directly on this environment, okay? So of course, you can set some policies in a VPN based on some access to some people, but the main point here is the user will have the access in some network. So the attacker, if explore these users, they will have the access inside of this network, in all those applications that you have inside this network, and all those access in this infrastructure inside of the network. That is the difference, okay? So here we can see that this data center security tools, it's just Infection Monkey, it's open source security tools, just to see more if you'd like to make some tests in this environment. Infection Monkey, it's open source. Then you have a tool which infect the other machines to propagate to them. Just suggesting some analysts to take some fun things inside of that, to explore some in some controlled environment, okay? And you can see more information about, for example, the security reports and zero trust. But the point in this open source tool is just to using in some labs, okay? And if you see here the environment, you have the data and the so thank you. And today I would like to invite you to think, not just to see about the account of the user. So this is the point here. So this is we have many gateways here in this infrastructure inside of the labs, just to suggest you and how you can manipulate, because you can, for example, if you have some analysts, you have the two machines, one attacker machine, another it's a victim machine. You can simulate some attacks, and after that you can see the behavior, just to learn. This is not suggest to learn more about that. But when you talk about the enterprise solutions, I suggest you, of course, the Senha Segura, because you can see more about how privileged access management work, right? So you can deliver some access granted instantly and easily and securely, without exposing the device password. Here it's very, very important. And without the user needs credential to access a PAM, okay, in a privileged access security platform. So of course, we have here the suggestion for Domo. It's one of the solutions. I'm not, again, a specialist in this technology. I'm a security research. I'm responsible to provide some vision of how the threats works, and mainly how you can protect this environment, right? So how the attacker perspective, because remember, so here we have the internet connections from the users outside the company. You have here the cloud in the gateway, and you have here the corporate network. Remember about the picture of the context, about the policies, about the principles of the zero trust. If you see here, you have the mobile needs to have the access to some emails. We need to have credentials. We have the third parties needs to access to the environment. So this is very important, how you can deliver the privileged access management from these people, even an employee, even a customer, even a third party access your organization. So here it's very important how you can bring you the access, okay? Another point is some benefits about this solutions, okay? So instant access and no VPN, no needs for a VPN or additional settings for a remote user. So this is, remember about the VPN. Again, the VPN is very important to access, but for the advanced persistent threat, or when you're looking more about the advanced kind of attacks, we need to see, you need to looking more about the privileged access management, okay? You have a maximum granularity. We need to remember, we need to deliver some policies, and we need to segregate, because we have different teams, as I mentioned during our conversation, cloud and developer team, DevOps teams, and so on and so on. Okay, now of course the best operation, because you need to manage all those access in your environment. So how you can manage this, you need to have the good tools to help you in this way. Okay, so now I finish here my presentation for you, my conversation with you. And if you have any questions, so I'm totally available to talk with you. I don't know, during these conversations, or you can send them a message by Twitter, by LinkedIn. You know, I am totally available again. And thank you, Alex, and thank you so much for.
Hey everyone, I'm here. once again, sorry for this. I think we have some problems, some freezing in the video here, but anyway, we are here, and we received some questions about this topic. I don't know if you have any questions, so please, you have the bottom here in an application. It is ask a question. So if you can write your ask here, but we received some questions like. Felipe, can you tell us more about exactly zero trust is and how do you believe that can help companies to protect those access and increase their level of cybersecurity? So it's a good question because when it's the main topic today, it's talk about the PAN. Remember that not only PAN but privileged access management. It has I mentioned during our conversation, it's an acronym of the privileged access management, PAN, and but we can use in that in whatever implementations you have in your organization. But when you think about the zero trust, you need to understand that it's very important you combine something like a PAN, privileged access management, and AIM, identity access management. You can use both of them to apply the correct concept using a zero trust. So when I explained it during our conversation about the VPN, from the attacker perspective, you just have only one point of the failure, because if the attacker explore the victim machine, they gain the access internally of the environment of the victim, right? So because of that, I believe that many companies need to apply this concept, this culture, because for me, it's not a buzzword, as I mentioned, but maybe you are thinking now and you are believe that it's a buzzword, but from my perspective, it's not a buzzword because we nowadays we have many different teams in our organization. So we have a DevOps team, developer team, database team, so many different teams. And of course, so how we can manage all those credentials, right? And how you can check the access. Remember about the principles. It's how it's very important, the principles. Remember that. So authenticate everywhere, one of these principles. Remember that. So because of that, we can control all those access. You can give the control and you can monitoring all those things. Because of that, it's very important you apply this zero trust culture in your environment using the privileged access management, using another concept called least privilege. Remember that. And you can give the access just only specifically user to a specific applications or specifically services, right? So this is because it's very important to give the access and increase the security level in your organization, right? The another question is, what are the main reasons organizations should be able to quickly detect and respond to security incidents related to a privileged credentials? Nice, good question. So that's a good point because nowadays we have many organizations creating different products, different infrastructure, and they are for because of the business they need to increase many different applications inside of the organizations. So and the growth is very fast, and you need to hire many people inside of the developer team, the database teams, and if you're looking from in 1 week you have I don't know 300 employees, and 6 months after you have maybe 1,000 employees. You can imagine so how you can manage it and how you can treat all those security incidents about that. So of course the grow the pain of growth, I will say that because your organization may are growing in the services and employees, and of course the company needs to looking more about the security, but usually, unfortunately, nowadays is still using this. When you talk about the cybersecurity or security, is more next to the how you can using your payment. It's maybe I need to give more, spend more money. It's more expensive to invest that in security. So we need to change this is in our mind. Why? Because in the end of the day, is if I suffering some attack, my data will be exposed. Maybe can cause some damage in the brand and the informations we have nowadays in different countries, many different laws like a GDPR. Here in Brazil, we have a LGPD and HIPAA and another different laws. And we need to present these when we suffer some exposure of the information. So we need to look in more at that. It's very important to be able to act very fast when you see some incident, right? Because of that, we need to monitoring all those things inside of our environment or organization, right? So let's see another question. So Felipe, what will be the consequence if they fail to do so? Yeah, so what, in this case, I think it's related to another question, right? About the security incidents, about the privileged credentials. One of the important thing is, if you think about the attacker perspective, usually the first environment compromised by the attacker is usually is the web application environment. So maybe because your infrastructures, you open to something to the internet, or maybe if you have some developers in your environment and these developers create something, for example, in a GitHub or a GitLab, and this developer forgot something or put the credentials inside of these applications, and the attacker can see these keys, and they can using this to explore some applications, for example. So the first gain the access in from these web applications. And the next steps from the attacker perspective is to gain the privileged access inside of the same applications, right? So gain the privileged access. So escalate privilege in this environment, right? Because probably they have the www user data. It's the web application users, right? So the idea of the attacker is to gain the privileged access inside all these applications. And after that, the attacker would like to see more about the network, to see and to move laterally inside of the environment, right? And this is usually the step when you're using, for example, the cyber chain methodology. It's this is the attacker. This is a military strategy, but we have the cyber chain methodology, and this is the another step to move it laterally, right? And so to see this, if we have, for example, if you don't have any or like security team to see these different behaviors in your network, it's very important you monitoring all those things. You need to have like some CM to integrate with many different logs. We can have some SOAR, right? So to apply a different tools to help you to be the visibility of the environment. And if you have, for example, a DevOps, or if you work with the different teams, developer teams, you need to have the good observability of your environment, right? And this is the point here. When you suffer some attack, when some your security sensors failed, we just to the action next is to be fast, and you need to investigate and interact that. But to do this, it's very important you have some sensors to detect that. This is the point here. And I think it's the last question is what you, Felipe, believe are the benefits of this continuous monitoring on the actions performed with the privileged credentials in environment of an organizations. Awesome question. And this is the benefits, basically. So how you can track about the different attacks that you have inside the environment. So how you can track? It's just possible to track or to see or what happened in your environment if you monitoring all those things. And sometimes I already heard about that, and that some organizations don't like to audit all those things, or maybe think this is the specific application. I don't need to have the audit logs, but remember one of the phrase from the uh, you know security guys. It's maybe a simple joking, but no logs, no crimes. And but it's true. Because of that, we need to register all those things. We need to have the logs, because when you have the logs, we can see exactly what happened in our organization, in our environment. So this is the principal benefits of the monitoring all those things. So monitoring all those connections when you think about the authentications process, because you can track if you suffer in some attack, of if you suffer some bypass of the attacker using some techniques like a cross-site requested forgery about your authentications, redirect your connections, or maybe if you suffering some brute forces in your authentications, we need to monitoring all those things to understand what exactly technique used by the attacker, and not just only that, but what maybe could be technique used by the attacker to explore or move laterally in your organizations. Because of that, it's very important to monitor all those things, right? And yes, I think we finished our conversation during this day, and I hope you like these conversations once again. And we have my contacts on the social medias, as I explained during this presentation. We can watch once again if you want. And by the way, I would like to invite you, if you'd like to suggest some topic about the PAN, zero trust, cybersecurity, or some topics that you'd like to hear about that, you can write me in the social medias, and I can prepare some presentation with you. If you want more presentation, more generic with some concepts, or if you want another presentations more technically with some demonstrations, so I will invite you to send me a message, and I can prepare and I can present to you, right? So I would like to say thank you, everyone, to stay with me and in Senha Segura. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us. Let me see if Mateus is here with us. And let's see here. Yes, math. So, yeah, so you are in mute, my friend. This is maybe it's normally in the pandemic, right? And it's still in mute. Can you hear me? No, yeah. And I can't hear you. No, no, no. I can see you, but I can't hear you. But anyway, you have some, you can write me in the chat. You have some message to our audience. Is yes or no? Just to, it's okay. Thank you so much, Matt. This is not a microphone, it is my drink, no alcoholic. It's a typical drink here in Brazil, and south of Brazil, by the way, is a chimarrão, right? And yes, Matt says, thank you so much. And it was very interesting. So again, everyone, thank you so much for being here with us, and see you in the next webinar.